Hey guys, welcome back to another video. Today we're going to be doing a walk around of BMW's brand new 128 Ti, which is next to me. Before we start the video, I just want to say a massive thanks to Tony Lewis, who's just off camera over there, and the Berry BMW group. Some of you probably recognise this man cave that we're in. I shoot a lot of my videos down here, and I'm very grateful that they're letting me have a close look at this brand new 128 Ti. Now, I remember the Ti being used on cars like the iconic but slightly odd E46 325 Ti Compact. Now, some of you might be too young to remember that car, but I certainly remember it from the early 2000s. It was actually used on the E36 in certain markets as well. So I think you had like the 318 Ti Compact. Essentially, it was a 3 Series, which was a bit shorter, wheelbase and a bit lighter. But actually, Ti dates right back to 1963 with the BMW 1800 Ti. I don't remember that. That's even before my time, probably more Tony Lewis's sort of era. So where does this 128 Ti sit in the current lineup? We all know the flagship M135i xDrive very well now. It's been out over here in the UK for at least a year, and this sits just underneath it. It actually uses a lot of the underpinnings and running gear from that car. So we've got the very familiar B48 engine and the 8-speed, I think it's called an Aisin gearbox. So that's an automatic gearbox, not a twin clutch, similar to the ZF 8-speed, but not as good. But instead of being an xDrive platform like the M135i is, this is a front-wheel drive only platform. So I'm really keen and excited about trying this car because in my head, it kind of sits between the M135i xDrive and Mini's GP3, which is front-wheel drive. Now, the GP3 is almost too extreme for UK roads and most tracks, in fact. It just torque steers everywhere, and it's too much. Whereas the M135i is almost too grown up in many aspects. It's almost too good for its own good. It's got grip everywhere, and some of the fun element has been taken out of that car. I think this is going to be the sweet spot, but obviously I haven't driven it yet, so I can't comment on that. The reason I say that is they've actually reduced some of the power, so they've taken about 40 horsepower away, down from 306 to about 265 on this one. They've also reduced some of the torque. They've taken about 50 Newton meters of torque away. It weighs about 85 kilos less than an M135i though. So again, it kind of sits between the GP3 and the M135i in terms of weight, but a bit less power. They've also done a fair amount to the chassis, and I think that's going to be the key part of this car that's going to make it shine here in the UK on our terrible roads. They've softened it up. They've taken some of the strengthening out of the chassis itself, which I think is a really interesting approach because modern cars are great. They're so stiff, and cars like the M135i is so solid. When you turn it in for the first time jumping out of the old 1 Series, you soon realise that the front end on the new 1 Series is so much better, and a lot of that has to do with track width, but also how stiff the actual chassis is. But it's almost too stiff in many ways. So backing that off a little bit and reducing some of the weight, I think is a really, really good recipe. And I'm really excited about trying it in this particular car. In terms of performance figures, well, it has a quoted or claimed 0 to 62 figure of 6.1 seconds, which is about 1.3 seconds slower than the M135i, but you're going to expect that because it's front-wheel drive only, and that's really all it's down to. The fact that you're not going to get a front-wheel drive car off the line and up to 60 miles an hour much quicker than 6 seconds, aside from the GP3, which I think is just over 5, which is quite unusual. But once you're rolling, I expect the performance of this to be very, very similar to an M135i, just because it weighs less and it has less drivetrain loss as well, because the power just goes straight to the front axle. There's no running around the car. So it's going to be really interesting to see what it feels like. And in fact, we're going to talk to Tony in a minute because he's had a chance to drive this car, albeit about 2 miles down the road to a petrol station. But it would be interesting to hear his little bit of feedback on what it feels like. In terms of styling cues and what's different, well, there's a few things around here that do separate it over an M135i or a normal 1 Series. You can see quite a few red accents on here. When you go inside, there's lots of red stitching. There's a bit of embroidered TI on the armrest there. And obviously when you get around the back, you've got the 128 Ti badging. When you look around the car, it does look different and a bit more special than your regular 1 Series. I really like it. I like the fact that it has the vertical grille. I think the whole car really does work. This car has hardly got any options on it. It's actually about £34,000, so £1,000 over the list price. And those options consist of the sapphire black paintwork, which is a metallic paint, looks really good actually in this light, and sun protection glass, but that's it. The car itself, as a base spec car, does come with a fair amount of standard equipment, and I think if you're getting one of these, you're probably not going to want to go too crazy on the options because you want to keep it nice and affordable. I think at just over 33 grand on the road here in the UK, it's priced really aggressively, and I think that's a really good price point. I actually had to look up what a Volkswagen Golf GTI MK8 costs because I've got no idea, and they're actually about 35 grand on the road now, which is just crazy. But I know cars are becoming more and more expensive, so if you compare it to a front wheel drive Golf GTI MK8, it's actually a couple of grand cheaper than that car, yet it's got a fair amount more power, and if anything, it's a bit more special. When you compare it to the M135i, it's about 3.5 grand cheaper spec for spec. So when you look at one of these with BMW's very latest 2.9 APR interest rates on PCP deals and stuff, I think it's going to be a very affordable little hatch that is going to lose very little to its more expensive sibling. Obviously drop Tony Lewis a line with your spec, etc., and he will quote you happy, hopefully, on one of these using his information at the bottom there in the description. Talk here, Tony. Let's get him on the camera now. He can give us a quick roundup of what he thinks of this car and also tell us about his extensive test drive to the petrol station 1.3 miles away.
So, 128 Ti. I had the briefest chance to drive this car just to get some fuel in it so it was ready for today. It's been PDI'd, possibly going to be a demonstrator, so hopefully we'll do plenty more miles in this car. But it was really quite a wet day, and I thought, you know, I've just got to see if this car has got some sporting pretension in it because I so want it to succeed. And I'll have to say it was on its toes. It just felt great. The steering felt really good. It actually feels so different to an M135i, so I can't wait for you to get the demo on the road and have a drive of it. I think the limiting factor on the day was the tyres, which we could talk about in a separate video for about 25 minutes, I'm sure. So potentially we need to look at performance tyres, and that's the only thing that worries me with it. But the drive of the car and the way the power just came in, I don't think the car's any slower than the M135i, and maybe that's just a perception, but it just felt good. It really did. So I'm really, really pleased and relieved. Well done, BMW. So where does this sit? You know, I think that's what a lot of people are looking at is, you know, why have we come out with this car? But you can see that there's a gap in the market between the M135i and our next model down. There's such a big gulf there between that and another 1 Series. So this fills that absolutely perfectly. So yeah, I just can't wait for you to get the car on the road.
Thanks for that, Tony. It's a shame that we both couldn't be on camera together, but COVID restrictions, etc. Also, and more down to the point, I lost my second mic last week, so there can only be one of us on the camera at one time. It's really interesting to hear his very slight input of driving this around the corner, and I'm really looking forward to driving this car, actually. I really am. Like I said earlier on, I'm hoping that it's going to be a combination between the far too hot GP3 and I wouldn't say it the far too normal M135i, but I reckon the M135i is just missing a little bit of fireworks, and I think a lot of that might have to do with the fact that it is an X-Drive platform and it almost does things too well. So I'm hoping that this is kind of going to be between those two and offer a very exciting drive. But stay tuned, I will be getting to drive one of Tony and Berry's demos very soon, and looking forward to bringing that to the channel. Thanks a lot for watching as always, guys. Remember to give Tony Lewis a follow on Instagram, and myself if you don't already. Subscribe and press the bell icon if you haven't already, and leave any comments and questions below the description. Until next time, I'll see you soon.
Yeah, thanks, Joe. So it's not from the first part, it's from the furnace and the third. And then the third.
Take the mask off. Take the mask off.
Oh, okay.